Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Win or Lose podcast. I am Lucas Ingham. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, one of the most prolific passers in NCAA history, top 3 overall draft pick in the NFL draft, 3-time All Pac-8 and Pac-10 performer, the godfather of Cougar football, Jack the Throne Samoan Thompson. How are you doing today, Jack?
Good, Luke. It's good to be with you.
Want to be respectful of your time, so we'll just jump straight into it. Kind of want to tie in your experience to what WSU is going in right now. Obviously, you experienced 4 coaching changes during your time at WSU. We've had 4 in 4 years, and we've got 3 in 3 years here now. So you know what it takes to go through an offseason and a coaching change. So what are the WSU players going through right now as they go through another coaching change, and what could Cougar fans expect from Kirby Moore in the fall?
Well, it's a little bit different than when I was playing. We didn't have we didn't know what the portal was, NIL. So the point being, when I was playing, we had guys that were there, at least, the class I was with, all four, all of us who attended Washington State and played for Washington State had the 4 different coaches. Whereas guys now, I don't know how many players today were here, 3 coaches ago.
Yeah.
And so, but for me, it was tough because there was no continuity, and we were at a very low ebb in our football program as far as trying to generate enthusiasm. Although I will say that I came into Washington State, graduated high school in 1974. That class, to this day, is the best recruited class we've ever had.
Really?
Of those in that class, there was another first rounder, Kenny Green, he was a cornerback. Had Dan Dornick, who went on, and we had 8 guys go pro. One guy,
Wow.
went, actually 9, because one went up to Canada and had an unbelievable career. Brian Kelly is now in the Canadian Football League Hall of Fame. Terrific receiver. He was one of 3 great receivers that I had. Mike Levenseller was another one. He and I played together at Cincinnati. But he went on, he became, to this day, I think the best wide receiver coach. I know the best wide receiver coach Washington State's ever had.
Yeah.
He coached for 20 years and pumped out a ton of great Cougar receivers. And so we had a real special class. And I redshirted 1 year, so I ended up staying an extra year from that high school class of 1974. And though we had a real tumultuous situation, in the head coaching position in 4 years, still a bunch of special guys who decided to stick it out. For myself, I had a chance to go pro in the season after the season of '77. Could have left with the same years in 1974 high school class, but I stuck around an extra year. I could have gone first round if I come out after my junior year. I was just too pissed off. I was pissed off at these guys who, these coaches that came in and left. Their word didn't mean squat. They come in and they're pontificating about, what it is to be a man and, dedication. It's all BS. The guy that ended up being my coach my senior year was Jim Walden.
Mm-hmm.
He lived through, he made good on his word, because we could not afford to have 5 years, 5 coaches in 5 years. And he said, I'm not going anywhere. And sure enough, he stayed for 9 years and took us to first bowl game in years. And he brought stability. He had great players before him. Mark Rippon, who went on to be the
Yep.
MVP in the Super Bowl. Um, Ruben Mays, the best,
The great Ruben Mays. Yep.
yeah, the best running back we've ever had, and just just a lot of great football players played for Jim Walden. Then he gave way to Dennis Erickson, who was here for only 2 years, but then he gave way to Mike Price, the greatest coach ever in Washington State. Took
For
us to
sure.
2 Rose Bowls, and ultimately he led us to Mike Leach, certainly the biggest character we've ever had in
No
college.
kidding. Yeah, no. So when I was looking at all your coaches, and then it's like, that those rapid fire coaches, and then it's Walden, and then it's Erickson, who obviously had success, and then Price. We've had a tremendous amount of stability over the years for the most part at the coaching position. So this is kind of uncharted territory for a lot of Coug fans who are used to seeing the coach stick around for a long time. And so, what do you think? You've gotten the opportunity to meet him. Obviously, what do you think is different about Kirby Moore, and how can he deliver that stability for a fan base that's desperately in need of it?
Well, at first impressions or anything, I couldn't have been more impressed with uh, first year coach here. Um, talking to Drew Bledsoe, uh, it was nice to. I saw him at the Gonzaga Cougar basketball game here.
Gosh,
Yeah, in Gonzaga.
yeah,
I'm just sitting there. Next thing you know, Drew was sitting next to me, and we're talking. And obviously, one of the topics uh, that came up was, you know, Kirby Moore, and he goes, one of the best things I like about it is that you know what his cell phone number, you know what the area code is, 509.
yep,
And I said, yeah, well, he's cut of the same cloth as you are, Eastern Washington raised, and if you spend any time with Kirby at all, you realize that he is very proud of his roots, coming from Prosser. He married a Prosser lady in Kayla, and I met them day after they arrived here, had dinner with them, and I'd seen in social media that they brought their kids with them. And as I was talking to Kayla, I said, "Where are your kids?" And I was expecting to meet your kids. And she said, I took them to my grandparents' house about an hour or so ago, and I said, "Grandparents? Yeah, they live in Palouse." Think about that. And then you think about the serendipity. Night with Cougar Athletics every
in
year.
Prosser.
Yeah, it's going to be in Prosser this year, not Tri Cities. Of all years, it's going to be in Prosser. And then now I got to get this confirmed, but it's going to be at a winery in Prosser, a
Mhm.
winery that's owned by Kayla's family.
Wow, that's
So
incredible.
yeah, if ever there was a match made in heaven, this is it. But
Right,
I will tell you, Luke, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to the Cougar fan base to really step up and ensure that Kirby could be our next. Kirby could be to us what Mark Few is to Gonzaga,
for sure.
and obviously a lot of things have to, a lot of cylinders have to be clipping at the same time, and I know this Kirby and his coaching staff, they're putting together a hell of a team, and ultimately, Cougs, we have to wake up and understand this is not the Pac-12 of 2005. Certainly when Mike Leach was here, but this is new territory. But the beauty of it all is that we get a chance to lead the course of Pac-12, and how we finish will be up to us, and we need to lead it. This new Pac-12 conference need us to lead from the front, and the days of sitting back and taking in a good season here, a good season there, that's BS. We as fans need to take hold and be and take part of this whole thing like we've never done before. Case in point, Boise State. They have less than half, maybe closer to 1/3 of alums as we do, and they have a hell of a program.
Incredible program.
And it's their alumni base that has willed that. They've willed the fact that they're going to play a significant role in the success of their football program. I mean, they bet the farm on it. The year that they beat Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl, the president said they're putting the flag right in the ground right now, and we're going to put all the chips in the middle. We're going to make sure that our football program takes precedence, because that's how we're going to grow our enrollment. That's how we're going to grow our academics. We're going to use that as a tool to make Boise State better than what it is. And I've talked to a couple of Boise State people who were there before that Fiesta Bowl, and they kid around and say, we used to kid around the fact that we had a diploma from a JC school. They kid around, but not now. A different story. The value of their diploma has skyrocketed.
Totally.
And this is off the will of their alumni base. They've taken what the president said and really, took it to heart. And, they became involved like never before. And now look at them. But the beauty for us is that we have to embrace who we are. We have an alumni base 2.5 times bigger than theirs. Been around. We have a legacy. We have a tier 1 research university. And I will tell you this, Luke. We have to understand who we are. And let me draw this picture for you. The Princeton Review. They publish lists every year on so many different topics. One of them is who has the best alumni in the country, and they rank them the top 20 public schools in the country. The number 1 ranked school is Michigan. Number 6 is Clemson. Number 7, Washington State University. We're in the top 10 best alumni in the country. And the other top 10 schools that I didn't mention, these are powerhouses. And we're in there in the top 10. Now ask yourself, what other legacy Pac-12 schools in the mix? One other, UCLA, and they're ranked number 17. Tell me where University of Washington is. Tell me where Oregon is. Tell me where Oregon State is. Arizona. They weren't on the list. And so my thing is to the Cougs out there is wake up. Wake up. And
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, understand who you are, what we are, and choose. I'm hoping that everyone makes the choice that the BSU alumni made back at that Fiesta Bowl against Oklahoma. Make the choice to be great. And, if all the Cougs step up and be the alumni base that certainly the Princeton Review sees us to be. See, that's the thing. They see us being greater than we see ourselves.
Totally.
BS about Couging it, that's bullshit. So I got to tell you, if I'm ever around a Coug that drops that term, I drop them as a friend.
Yeah.
Because they're not a friend of mine. Because they bought into the BS that UW has put on us. And because that's where they want us to be. We can't be that. We got to be who we are. And who we are is we're a great school. You think about it. Cougs love being around Cougs. We're passionate about our school. We love our school more than those purple pukes love their school. It's a fact.
Yeah.
And so, but we need to really understand that we are a first class university, and we just we embrace that and take that to the next level. The only people who are going to stop us is us.
Yeah. I think a lot of Cougs just don't realize how good we have it. And, every time I'm back in Pullman and I'm with a bunch of Cougs, and so I like to just remove myself for a moment and think about how amazing this place is and what it's meant to all of us. And Boise, like you said, Boise State realized that. They capitalized on it. And I think that's a perfect transition because their president staked that claim. And, I was curious to get your thoughts on about, obviously we've had a transition in our leadership here over the last year or two. And President Cantwell's came in and taken a totally different approach. She said the athletics is the doorstep to the university. This is how we drive enrollment. This is how we get people in here. Because when you look back at it, the highest year of enrollment WSU's ever had, I'm pretty sure, is the year after Minshew Mania. And people saw us all over, and we were a national brand, and people were excited about Washington State like we're excited about Washington State. So I was kind of interested to see what you saw, or because Coug Fan had an article last week that Bill Moose is in the running for to be the athletic director, and so I was just curious as to what your view of what WSU leadership has to do moving forward to put us in the position on top of the fan involvement.
Well, let me just say this: I believe in Betsy Cantwell. To your point, she's a different kind of leader. She's an OBS, extremely smart, very passionate leader, and we need to embrace that and be grateful that we have her leading us, because we need a leader with a vision to take us to that next level. Now, for me, when it comes down to the AD, let me just put it this way: whoever she picks, I'm supporting.
Right.
Now, I think, to be very candid, I think that John Harlow has done a great job, and if he's in the mix, that's God bless him. He's earned the right to be considered, absolutely. And but I will tell you that whoever I call it Prez, picks, I'm backing, and let's get going. Let's get going.
Yep.
We got Cougs souls to save, and Cougs souls to wake up, and really, again, re-embrace who we are. And I moved from Seattle to Spokane 3 years ago, and it makes me sick, to be very frank with you, some of the mentality that goes on here.
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
this, it's us being leaders in the Pac-12. I believe that it's the Inland Empire Cougs that need to step up more than anyone else in terms of really stirring the pot, getting people. This is where the butts in the seats come from. We have 60,000 or so Cougs in the Inland Empire, Spokane, part of Idaho, and more importantly, in Eastern Washington, there's 1.2 million people. If the Cougs, when the Cougs step up and really embrace again who we are, we can affect those 1.2 million people. And
Totally.
you tell me we can't fill Martin Stadium? Give me a break. But we just need to not take a backseat to Gonzaga. I went to that Gonzaga game, and I was told, it's just really a strange thing that there are a lot of Cougs there. I said, what do you mean? A lot of Cougs who have season tickets. My question is why?
Yeah.
Why? And I met a guy who had season tickets in basketball. I said, why? With all due respect, why would you do that? Well, they're good basketball. I know they're good, but they don't need your money. They don't need your money. When I was playing, and for like several years into the 80s and whatnot, Gonzaga was this far away from bankruptcy, right? And God bless them, because they got they had a run of some good winning seasons, led off by guys like John Stockton, one of the best ever, and they leveraged that. they leverage that to, by their alumni, they leverage that to ensure that they can, lock in winning season one after the other.
Right.
And look what it's done for them.
Yeah.
Look what it's done for their enrollment.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
And they get donations from WSU alumni and big WSU donors in Spokane who donate to football, donate to Gonzaga basketball, and that's something we got to change.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me gag. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, but they don't need our money. Our school needs our money. If we do that, Katie bar the door. And this is my challenge to Cougs is to wake up, embrace again who we are. Again, top 10 best alumni base in the country.
Hmm.
That's who we are. We need to act it. And so I know I'm coming across harsh, but I'm tired. I'm at my age, I don't care anymore. I'm going to say what's on my mind and my heart. And, we have it within us to take this thing to, levels that I think in 3 years, if things go right, it'll shock all of us, not me. I've gotten to know our new commissioner, or Teresa Gould, talking about leadership. I'm glad she's at the helm of the Pac-12. And, on a one-off conversation, she said, we really need Washington State to be that leader. Yep. And I'm encouraging all Cougs to realize that. And we can do this. We can do this. Kirby can be the next Mark Few for us. Mm-hmm. Right? But we have to embrace our responsibility like the Gonzaga alumni embraced theirs. Again, give them credit. And, the Boise State alumni, they did it. Look what's happened to them. Well, we can do it, and it'll cure a lot of ills for our university right now, the challenges that we have. But we can start it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And what I'd say to Cougs is look at Boise State and Gonzaga and say they're in the the inland Northwest. Why can't that be us? What do they have that we don't? And the answer is maybe that they're in a major metropolitan area, but we have the alumni base, like you said, and we there's no reason that football program and that basketball program can't be what ours look like. So absolutely. I totally agree. I think it's just a challenge to Cougs that they realize that they need to step up from students showing up to games and alumni traveling from the west side or Spokane, wherever it may be, butts in seats and donating to the program.
Yeah. And, again, it's the Cougar Collective. There was a saying that was coined by Jed Collins, mighty by many, right? Mm-hmm. And if a lot of people became a member of the 1890 Club, $18.90, you multiply that, I think currently we're north of 3,000 members. If we had 30,000 members paying $18.90, that would cure a lot of ills. But again, we have to continue pounding that message out there. Mm-hmm. It's been done before. It's been done by BSU. It's been done by Gonzaga. What cracks me up in living here in Spokane, I give a lot of credit to Gonzaga and their marketing campaign. They've leveraged their success on the court. If I've watched one commercial, I've seen dozens of commercials with Gonzaga basketball players. Yeah. So if you think about it, we have like 60,000 alums on this side. I think, I could be wrong, I wish someone would correct me. I think Gonzaga alumni, they total under 10,000 here. Yeah. Most of their alumni exists on the I-5 corridor where our alumni base is located. And so they're using Gonzaga. Think about this logic. They're using Gonzaga basketball players to promote products to be sold to Cougar alums. Yep. Right? And we're giving into it. You got to stop that. We need to be talking to those vendors and say, excuse me, but we have great athletes that you can use to market to us,
Yeah.
right? And if I see a Gonzaga flag in a business, I said, where's your Cougar flag?
Hmm.
I'm not shy about this anymore.
Yeah.
Well, what about? And I said, there are a lot more Cougs here than Gonzaga alums. So if you want to, make Cougar alums and your customers feel good, think about that.
Hmm.
It's that kind of stuff that we as Cougs need to, come out of our shell and let people know, not in a rude way, but in a polite but assertive way. Because I'm tired of it. I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to put up with fellow Cougs that, if I find out they're season ticket holders of Gonzaga, give me a friggin' break.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
If you have problems with our Cougar basketball, so be it. We have something they don't. They have a football team.
Right.
Jump on the bandwagon. We need you, not them. They don't need you.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they have this apathy for Cougar basketball. And I don't accept opinions of people who want to complain about Cougar basketball, who don't want to be involved, who don't want to go to games. Like, if you're going to be mad about Cougar basketball and just go to Gonzaga, then how you can't complain about WSU basketball. You got to be involved. You got to, like you said, join the 1890. They need help on the NIL side of things. There's things that we can do to make that program different. So to just say, oh, well, I'm going to go watch Gonzaga, what the hell? I mean, be a part of our program, because we saw just a couple years ago how amazing and special Beasley can be in the tournament run, and how much fun that was, and how much attention it brought to us, and why they wouldn't want to see that happen for us and just be okay watching Gonzaga have fun with it. I don't get it.
I think you're too young to know this bit of history. I think us Cougs, a lot of Cougs here in witnessing, it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
As a prisoner, and after a
Yeah.
while, you just end up just following what is told to you.
Mhm.
Baloney,
Yeah.
I tell you, I lived my whole life on the west side in Seattle. When I grew up, I came to America in 1960. Grew up in Seattle. Grew up wanting to be a purple puke. Okay, and
Thank God you weren't.
well, they as it turned out, their coach, frankly, screwed up. He assumed I was coming, and a couple things happened that wasn't the right thing, and I made the choice. I told him I'm not going to come here. He cussed me out. I left it, went out of his office, and never looked back. Best decision I ever made. Now, fast forward, we get married, played in the NFL, came home back to Seattle to live. I love Seattle. It's a beautiful city, but it sucks being in the shadows of that stadium, right? But that's, I could put up with it because that's Husky territory, right? Half the city of Seattle is owned by University of Washington, and I give them respect that their due. When I made the decision to move to Spokane, I have 4 grandsons. 2 live in Spokane and 2 live down in Pullman. And my wife and I decided, what are we doing here in Seattle? So we made the move out here. And one of the pluses for moving out here for me was being back in Cougar country. I come out here only to be inundated with Gonzaga stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when I was here, this was a Cougar city. And if you think about it, the economic engine that Washington State University represents in Spokane is huge. Our medical school, huge.
Right.
All the other. I was on the board of directors for the foundation. I learned firsthand how important we are to this city. Okay, to Spokane, and I'm not going to take a back seat to Gonzaga or any of the school out here. I'll give them the respect they're due, but nothing more, because we have so much more to offer. And my mission here is to wake the Cougars up and to realize that we can make a difference. And, you know, I'll keep preaching that till the day I die.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that success is going to start with success on the field. You know, fans are going to be more excited to come if the team's doing well. So I want to get back to Kirby in this upcoming season, because he was able to retain a lot of players that, frankly, I thought were going to be on the outs. Tony Freeman, Kirby Voorhees, the whole offensive line, guys that I think fans were expecting were going to get big money thrown at them. And I think we did see a stepping up. I think the collective did an amazing job. I think, you know, we got some serious investment. We brought a lot of guys in. So I was curious just to get your take on a couple of them. Have you gotten the chance to meet Caden Pinnock yet, the new quarterback from UC Davis, or
No,
have you seen any of him?
I haven't yet, and you know, I hear nothing but great things about him, and you know, we're fortunate to have him. And for me, it starts with the coaching staff and the support that John Harlow and his staff has given them. I mean, I know this: no one worked harder than John Harlow, and I want people to understand the fact that, you know, number one, he's the guy that hired Kirby and gave him, and in addition to that, gave him the support Kirby needed to really make a splash. To your point, so and I'm not going to cover all the things that you just covered because you're spot on.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like our coaching staff, our athletic department, actually starting with our pres, Cantwell. You know, we pushed all the chips in the middle of the table and said, let's do it. You know, let's do what we got to do. The thing I love being around Coach Kirby, Coach Moore, and his staff, and you know, I've gotten to know Brad Larondo, our GM.
Yep.
Well, what a dynamo he is, right?
Yeah.
And he was he's, I think, in mid-50s. Reason why I bring that up, you know, that story of the Oklahoma game. He was there.
Really? Right, because Boise State. Yeah.
Yeah, he was part of the transition. You know, helping turn that program. So Kirby and Brad and a lot of the coaches that they have, they've been there, done it, and they're excited. They look at this as a huge opportunity. Being here at Washington State, and I know that Missouri were so bummed that you lost Brad Larondo.
Yeah.
And he's here working his magic. And so my thing is, there's no better time to jump on this bandwagon than now. And with Coach, you know, Moore and his staff and all the great things they've done, and the people who, as I said, they've been there, done it. They've been and they've done the things that we want to have happen to our program. You know, they know how to leverage success on the football field. Okay, and you know, I'll one quick example. That's what happened with Boise State when they had that Oklahoma game, right? And we had an opportunity that confronted us. Remember, you're way too young, but when Mike Price was here, we had 3 10-win seasons in a row.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know where you're going.
And we ended up in the top, I think, 8 schools in the country, right? Ranked in the top 8. And we squandered that opportunity. Squandered it. You know, we lost Coach Price. You know, if I was the athletic director at that time, there's no way I was going to let Coach Price leave. I'd fall on every sword to ensure that the best coach we've ever had wasn't going to leave. And he left. And Coach Doba extended one great year. We won over, I think, 10, or I think we won 10. We beat Texas.
The Holiday Bowl against Texas. Great game.
Yeah, and so, but we took a dive after that. And then Bill Moose came around and hired Mike Leach and changed things. but we need to sustain now. We need to build this program so it becomes sustainable. And don't let anyone convince you, and any Cougs are watching this, don't let anyone talk to you and tell you that it can't be done here. It's BS. BS. It can be done, and if we have the right mindset, I mean, that's what they thinking about Gonzaga,
Yep.
15, 20 years ago. Well, they did it. That's what they said about BSU, you know, uh, before they had that Oklahoma epiphany,
Yeah.
and they're doing it, and we can do it. In fact, in talking to Brad Larondo, he said, "Golly, the tools that we have here at Washington State, our facilities," and he says, the alumni base we have here." He's telling me this, and this is unlike anything he experienced at Boise State.
Yep.
And they just came back from the desert, the Cougs in the Desert event, 2 days ago, Monday. And he says, I mean, it's amazing. We have not just a great alumni base, but all things considered, we have a very well-to-do alumni base.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of dormant, pent-up demand out there. But we need to, shake them up and say, get involved. We need everybody.
Yeah, and we're talking about this opportunity we have to lead this new conference, but I also think I want to point out that we win a lot of games since Mike Leach has been here. I mean, even just in my years of college, Cam Ward had us 13th in the country. We were 4-0. John Mateer had us 8-1. I mean, I think people have this whole woe is me attitude that we're so far away, and we're not. We're right on the tip. We're right on the precipice of just, if those last 3 games after they started 8-1, they lost the last 3 games by a combined 7 points. Flip those results, they would have been knocking on the door of the college football playoff, and that's just 2 years ago. So to think that we're so far away, I think, is a fallacy that all these Cougs can get woe is me and, the Pac-12 and all this stuff. And it's like, we're really a lot closer than, and we win, we win a lot of games, and we have since Mike Leach took over and, revived the program. We've won a lot of games over the last decade.
I very rarely am critical of coaches, very rarely. But then you just brought up that we're 8-1, with John Mateer. And I get so pissed off thinking about this, where we had, I believe we had an offensive coordinator whose brain and heart was elsewhere.
Yeah,
I
totally
just
agree.
you're gonna have to, and I like him, as a person. But I remember we were playing against Oregon State University down there. I was there.
I was there, unfortunately.
Okay. And I went up to him and I asked him, rumor has it that you're talking to Oklahoma, and he just flat out said no.
Yeah.
No, it's not true, and I get it. He didn't owe me anything, but at the end of the day, I think back on it, his mind wasn't with us, his heart wasn't with us, and we've got to change that. We can't. We got to get people who want to be here. And we can do that. It's been done at far lesser schools than us.
Yep.
So we got to really question. What can we do as alum? And frankly, there's a lot we can do. Aside from just giving, come to the game.
Yeah, I remember sitting there, to your point about the offensive coordinator, I was working the game for Zoo Crew, that fateful Wyoming game, and thinking, and sitting there freezing my butt off and looking up. I was on the field, and I remember looking up around the stands and thinking, gosh, there is just no way that this guy is going to be back in this stadium next year. And, there's things, fan support and, all that stuff I think matters to these guys a lot. And I'm not defending what he did at all, but I'm just saying that, these guys make decisions, but his heart was not in that game. And that was evident from the minute that it started.
If I'm going to be critical again, I might as well just say, I love Jake, and he should have let him go. I know he knew. I'm sure he did. I mean, I want people who want to be Cougs to be here.
Yep.
And the balls out, from start to finish. We need fans to be here and to go balls out, start to finish. Be in your seats after halftime. Don't tell me that you can't make it. make a difference. Are you kidding me? I've not missed a home game. This is going to be 21 years in a row,
Hell yeah.
and 18 of those I came from Seattle.
Hmm.
Right, so you can't tell me it can't be done. But at the end of the day, people from Seattle, I don't blame them as much. We need the Eastern Washington Cougs,
Yeah,
Tri
step
Cities.
up.
The Cougs in the Tri Cities are batshit crazy.
Hmm.
In terms of in a good way. They're I've been around a lot of the Tri City Cougs, and there's pent up demand there, and I got
Hmm.
a feeling they're going to show up, particularly one of their very own, out of process,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And so I'm expecting to see a huge turnout by the Tri City slash I think it's I-82 that runs through Prosser and Yakima Cougs.
Hmm.
Oh, man, bring it, guys, bring it. And so I mean, I haven't been this excited for a season in a long time, and it starts. My belief starts with Coach Moore being here.
Yeah. No, I'm really optimistic that we can get some juice going on the road and come back to Pullman, and people are going to be excited, which is something else I wanted to ask you about. So you guys knocked off number 15 Nebraska in Lincoln in 77, correct?
Before your parents were born, yeah.
And then, well, a lot of people remember that game, but they don't talk about you guys went on to East Lansing the following week and beat Michigan State, and then you went on to Lawrence the following week and almost beat Kansas. So a 3-0.
We got screwed that game.
Did you?
Oh yeah, yeah. We it was a last minute drive, a 2 minute drill. We got the ball down, I don't know, inside the 20, and we had a great kicker in Paul Watson.
Yeah.
And he could kick him out from 60, easily. He had a strong leg, and he kicks the ball, and in Lawrence, Kansas, there's a huge huge stands behind the field goal posts.
Hmm.
When he kicked the ball, everyone was standing and they went down thinking, "Oh, it's good. We're done. We lost this game."
Yeah.
Some jackass referee said he missed it. It was BS. He made it. It was
Oh,
inside as you're looking at the goalpost, it's the left goalpost, if I'm not mistaken. That guy said it missed. It went outside of that goalpost. BS.
my goodness. That's a hard. I did not know that.
Oh, so we would have been 3-0. And that was back in the days we had 3 straight games away.
Yep.
In Nebraska, East Lansing, Michigan State University, then back to Kansas, and then we came home and played, I think, Cal Berkeley and beat them.
Yep. Well, so you guys were obviously incredibly successful. I mean, that's a great road trip to start the year. What is it going to take for these Cougs to go on the road? Obviously, it throws in a different wrinkle that the Apple Cup is their very first game, but in Seattle and then in Kansas at Kansas State, what is it going to take for them to take the show on the road to start the year? Is there some advantages you can take out of that, or what was your experience? What was the key to the success?
Well, it starts off with the Apple Cup, right? And you want to make a splash, beat them at Husky Stadium. And, if we're able to walk away with the victory, that's going to, sound the trumpets loud and clear.
Mm-hmm.
That, Coach Moore is the real deal. And, if we can string 2-0, it will speak volumes. And watch out.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to talk about shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and maybe winning one of those two. I want to come away 2-0, and why not? We've done it before, so
Totally.
you just gotta stay the focus, believe in the process. To the players, find that belief in your coaching staff, because this is a heck of a good coaching staff. The background that they collectively bring is exactly what we need.
Yep. Yeah, I fully agree, and I think looking at if they come out of those two games 2-0, and what the scene would be like in Pullman, welcoming them home with the stadium renovations and just the atmosphere that that could create, I smile, I grin ear to ear thinking about it. So, but like you said, 1-1 wouldn't be the worst thing either, and then we're into conference play for the first time in 2 years, which should be nice to play for something down the stretch. I do think that hurt the crowds down the stretch in Pullman last year. I was there for the Oregon State game after Thanksgiving, and whatever they listed the attendance at was they were they were lying. There was not a lot of people in that building that night. So I think I wanted to get your take on that flex game that they have scheduled for after Thanksgiving, where they reserve the right to change the opponent and change the time and all that kind of stuff. What did you make of that, and do you like that idea as a player?
Well, you know, again, I put a lot of stock into the leadership of both our conference and the president of our school, right? And they know a hell of a lot more about that element than I pretend to know,
Right.
because they're in it. This is what they do. It's particularly the Pac-12 conference, and I will tell you something about Teresa Gould. I remember when it went down to two schools, right after the implosion of the Pac-12, and I had gone to two press day events down in one was in Vegas and one was in L.A. And then the conference blew up, and then that following year, just the two of us, and Teresa Gold was hired as our new commissioner. Too bad that she wasn't our commissioner the two previous years. That conference wouldn't have blown up because she would not have let it blow up. She would have taken those presidents, and ripped them a new one and say,
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's too bad she wasn't the commissioner through the 2010s. We sorely needed new leadership
yeah,
all of those
exactly.
years.
So I give Teresa a lot of credit because no one works harder than her, and certainly she. Oh, I was going to tell you that. So I went to that press day, her first one, and the motto that they had up was "Welcome to the fight." And it was just us and Oregon State. So me and Ryan Leaf represented the Cougs. Steven Jackson, their great running back, represented the Beavers, and we got to talk. And then when we were finished, Teresa got up there as our new commissioner. And the first question out of the gate was, what are your thoughts of your the two previous, the predecessors? I loved her answer. She says, I didn't come here to talk about my two predecessors. I'm here to talk about Washington State University and Oregon State Universities. She went off, two land grant universities who, I believe the mission of land grant universities. She says, I'm from Iowa. I'm a farmer girl. And one thing I've learned about ag people, we're tough. And we're going to survive or we're going to thrive. We're going to figure things out. And I'm thinking, man, I'm all in. This person is one hell of a leader. And she's done nothing but good since she's been our commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd never heard this flex deal ever.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wow, there's got to be a good reason, and I'm sure that as the season unfolds, we'll see the fruits of that decision.
Right. No, it's exciting. It's exciting to see. I'm excited for Boise to be in Pullman. I'm excited for all the games as a season ticket holder, but it's fun to have some of those marquee games back on the schedule. And, you experienced realignment in your era because Arizona and Arizona State joined the Pac-10 at the time, your senior year. So something that you're accustomed to, not in the way we've seen it the past couple of years, but how do you foresee, some of those defecting schools? Do you think there's a chance? Well, and your nephew was just named the head coach at Stanford. Congratulations. And do you see some of those schools like Stanford and Cal that are struggling in their new conferences you think there's a chance maybe they come back and rejoin us here?
Yes, I do. And I had a great talk with my nephew, And, I told him, Tabitha, look, I hesitate in telling you this, but I've never BS'd you. Since you're born. I've been with him. I've known him since he was born. He and my son Tony are best friends, right? And so I know him. He knows me. And I told him, I'm just going to cut to the chase. You and Andrew Luck have no business being in the ACC. Are you kidding me? Your legacy is with the Pac-12. And I'm not going to tell you what he said to me. I'll just tell you what I said. And the bottom line is, let's just put it this way: he didn't fight with me,
Right.
in that he knows where I'm coming from. He said, and someday when you guys are back where you belong, and that you guys aren't playing on the Atlantic coast, give me a break. I mean, these are the kinds of discussions I had with him. And it turns out that he and Teresa Gould and the Gould family are good friends.
Interesting.
He was an assistant coach with Teresa's husband at Stanford. Okay, so just understand that there are ongoing discussions. I think we, in our position out here, these things are ongoing. Common sense has to kick in someday because it costs money,
Right.
to do otherwise. And the other thing is, it wouldn't surprise me, when realignment happens, UCLA comes back. If I was UCLA, I'd be so pissed off that I followed USC, that I kissed their butts, right?
Yeah.
And they could have stayed here and owned LA. Get out of the shadows of those Trojans. Following them does nothing for you. You staying and being, leading the pack and staying, that could have really set a template. Then you look at Oregon and Washington. Give me a break. Those two supposedly hate each other. Well, they were kissing cousins.
Yeah.
Going over to the Big 12. God bless them. But at the end of the day, instead of playing UW at the end of the season, we get to play in the first game out of the chute.
Yep.
I think that we're going to be fine because I have total confidence in Kirby and his staff. I really do. And the people that they're amassing, it's really impressive. The people that they brought in, the people, to your point, you said earlier, the people they were able to keep.
Yep.
There's good reason for us to feel good.
Yep.
And in addition to that, I go back to my thing about Princeton Review, right? There's a good reason for us alums to feel good about who we are.
Right.
Right? We're not sisters of the poor. We're in the top freaking 10 best alumni base in the country.
Yep.
And that we act like it. Not from a cocky UW way. I'm talking about in the WSU way. The way we've been brought up in land grant university, ag school. I take pride in that.
Yeah. And number one in students' satisfaction according to the Princeton Review. So
yeah,
there's just no reason for WSU fans to be sorry about anything. I think we have an incredible opportunity, like you said, just to kind of recap it, to not only be the leader, but I think to dominate this new conference. And
yes.
There's no reason that shouldn't be the aspiration as a legacy Pac-12 school who's had a lot of success to move into this and say, hey, we can be the premier brand in this conference.
Preach on, Lou.
Well, I want to give you an opportunity to get out of here on one last thought. I wanted you to share why WSU is so important to you. And just, that sounds really open-ended, but what makes it so important for you to feel inspired to come back and to preach these things about WSU, and what was the most important impact that it had on your life, and why do you feel this loyalty to it that I share and so many of us share?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that I met my wife there. Talking about, aside from making the decision to go to Washington State, going there allowed me to meet my wife, Molly, And, you know, I couldn't be more blessed in that regard. But I will tell you that the quick story, when I was getting recruited by WSU, Mike Price was my coach that was recruiting me. And he put me together with one of the young quarterbacks, you know, um, I won't mention his name, but we were driving to the hotel, and Coach Price said he's going to show you a good time, right? And you know, he's kind of poking that quarter. He was a freshman. He said, "Yeah, I got you, Coach." And Coach Price says, "Well, tell Jack what time you're going to pick him up." You know, and he looks at me and he goes, "I'll be here at 6:45. Meet me out front." I said, "Okay, I'll be there." And they dropped me off, went in the hotel at 6:30. I went down to the lobby and I was waiting out there. 6:45 came and went, 7 o'clock came and went, 7:15, and I'm thinking, this guy's not showing up, right? And so what did I do? I walked the campus. Look, I swear to God, I think I must have had a lost look on my face. At least a half a dozen kids, you know, because I was walking around thinking, man, this is a pretty school. You know,
Yeah.
uh, um, President the Terrell Mall
Mm-hmm.
by the library, and I was walking. I was like, God, this is a pretty school. And people were stopping. Kids were stopping. Saying, "Can we help you? Are you looking for something?" I said, "No." And I just walked around, went down by Bryan Tower, and thinking this
Yeah.
is pretty cool. You know, there's just a feel of Washington State. And I went back to. By the way, this is really dates me. The hotel, you know where it was located? At
Where's it at?
at, at the Cub.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
I
no,
did not know that. There was a hotel in the Cub?
oh, yeah.
Oh
When
my
you come
goodness.
in the front door, you know there's like a counter there, right by the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
elevators. Well, that's where you check in.
Oh my gosh.
And so I came back, got back, and I'm thinking, wow, what a beautiful school. And I don't think I've ever met nicer people.
Yeah.
That was my impression. The next morning, Coach Price picks me up, and he had a smirk on his face. Yeah, I bet he had a good time last night, right? And I said, yeah, I had a good time, Coach. He said, so did you have a good time? He was asking me that. I said, yeah, I had a good time. He says, where all did you go? I said, well, I walked the campus. He goes, walked the campus? I said, yeah. Mike come pick you up? I said, no, no one came. And he was like, are you kidding me? He said, Felix. I said, no. But I walked the campus and I said, geez, Coach, really nice kids go here. And I'm a senior in high school.
Yeah.
And I was, I don't know how much longer. He took me to the airport and he said, geez, I'm really sorry. Chances are you're not coming. I said, I'm coming. I said, if it's the last thing I do, I'm going to beat his ass out. And he said, all right. Coach Price, he knew that I was a fighter.
Yeah.
That's what us Cougs do. We fight.
Yeah.
When we're wrong, we're the last people you'd want to do wrong by, right? So to answer that question that you have, we're different. Washington State University is a different school, and I believe it has to do with those of us who went to Pullman campus and have the ag influence culture permeate us. We learn as students, we're not in a big city, so we had to create our own fun. We had to be around each other and being in the ag community. And I gave speeches when I was playing. I gave speeches to virtually every town within a 50-mile radius of Pullman, Washtuckna, Rosalia, you name it, I was there. And I really soaked in the ag culture. Just being honest, hardworking, treat people right. That permeates Washington State University and its students. I really believe that, and that's what makes us different. And that's why we don't take crap from anybody.
Yeah.
We sure as hell shouldn't be taking crap from any other Pac-12 school or anybody that we go up against, because we're special in that way.
Yep. No, that's a great story, and that's a great Coug way for you to find your love for Washington State, and the quarterback blows you off and you just get to take in the beauty of Pullman. I think that's awesome. And your family is a perfect embodiment of that, because I told you this on the phone last week. My very first professor at WSU was your son, and he helped me get my LinkedIn set up and my handshake. And I'm a lifelong Coug, so I'm sitting there in class. I'm like, Thompson, like, there's no way this guy's related to that Jack Thompson, right? So, but that's perfect Washington State, that your son is there and he's a professor and he's a part of the community just the same way you were. And that's what makes us Cougs. And that's why I'm just super grateful for the opportunity to talk to you today. I really appreciate it. And could not agree more with your message about the future of Washington State. And I hope more Cougs get on board with the way we think about it and just step up. And it's a long way off until the fall, but we got a great Cougar baseball team that people should go and watch down in the spring. Weekend. You're going down this weekend?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
That's the plan. I want to go down and catch the early games, and that's the beauty of living here in Spokane. I'm only an hour and 15 minutes away.
Right.
Well, let me, if I can, Luke, just leave you with a thought. All right.
Go ahead.
We have on Facebook, there's this group called Die Hard Cougs.
Mm-hmm.
They're anything but. I hate to say that, in terms of, I know a lot of people on it, but it just cracks me up.
Yeah.
Because, they're the biggest bitchers and moaners around, and to name yourself Die Hard Cougs, that's baloney.
Yeah.
Baloney. And so my encouragement to Cougs out there is that we can literally control, what we want to have happen. We are the masters of our future. I know that sounds corny, but it's true.
No, it's true.
And it's not wishful thinking. It's not Pollyanna. It's fact. When the Princeton Review ranks our alumni like that, like Clemson, there's Virginia Tech up there. Gosh, I wish I had that list. I'll get it to you. Maybe you can post it someday.
Yeah.
And then, but the people that we were ahead of, is
right.
Like staggering. And then not to mention, we only had 2 teams from the Legacy Pac-12 make that list.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is number 17. The rest aren't even on the list. So my encouragement to all Cougs is really embrace fact as to who we are, what we're all about, and we need to purge ourselves of that lame ass losing mentality, the loser mentality, like is permeated a lot of diehard Cougs. You guys are spewing lies. You guys are. You need to embrace the truth, and if we start there, Katie barred the door as far as how far we can go, and I'm excited. That's what I'm excited about.
Couldn't agree more. I think the sky's the limit, and if the diehard Cougs, the picture should just be a picture of you. They shouldn't call any of them that. It would be you. You're the most diehard Coug that we have. So thanks again, Jack. I really appreciate it.
Good. Thank you very much. We'll hope to see you again soon at WSU.
Yeah. See you soon.
Right on. Go Cougs.